And certainly the issue of gun violence prevention is critical in all communities. And we're pleased to welcome Erie County Legislature Majority Leader Howard Johnson to the show tonight. He sits on the county's Gun Violence Prevention Task Force. That group was formed last summer after County Executive Mark Poloncarz declared gun violence a public health crisis. So we thank you so much for joining us. And I just want to start with the group's recent status report. It is the first status report. So help us understand, first of all, just what that means and what have you been able to determine so far about this issue here in Erie County?
So the status report is the group's objectives, the objectives of this program, what it outlines. So I'll just go through a few of the points. To decrease gun violence among youth, increase funding to programs specifically designed to reduce gun violence, work with local law enforcement agencies to create strategies, work with marginalized populations to provide education on gun violence, advocate for relevant policies and support state and local and federal programs that reduce gun violence.
There's a lot of things to do, certainly. It's a long list, and it's also a list that we've heard for many, many years. So let me ask you what the #1 priority is for the task force, and what are some things that you think you can realistically do in Erie County in the near future to maybe make a little bit of progress here?
I think the #1 priority is to reduce to increase funding to programs that reduce gun violence. And then the second most important thing is the education to the communities about gun violence. I think those are the two most important things there.
When you look at some things more specifically, what are some of those things that would help to reduce gun violence? What are those programs?
Education, that we'll start there, getting out to the communities, making a door-to-door effort, talking to the community at large where the gun violence is taking place, educating them on the gun violence. We have a lot of gun violence, particularly in East Buffalo, and I think we need to begin to address that with the educational piece. And the funding will come into place where you can just, get some of these groups out here that, has the expertise in this to get out there and actually talk to some of those communities.
If we look at the roots of this, last summer when gun violence was considered a public health risk in Erie County, it had the highest rate of violent crimes involving a firearm in 2020 across the state. It was even higher than New York City. Have you looked at the why this might be the case in Erie County? Do you have any access to any new data that can kind of help as a roadmap through all this?
Yeah, I think that I think the biggest issue is what is happening in our communities. Probably the lack of investment on the east in East Buffalo. That's one of the biggest I believe one of the biggest reasons for the increased gun violence.
When people ask you or reach out to you and they're frustrated about this situation, what are some things that you say, here's how you can help? Because certainly there's a lot of things, as we talked about, that need to be done, and clearly you need the resources of people to help. What are some things that people can do? Because certainly this is something that people feel helpless about because they look at what happens and says, well, what can I do? What can they do? I think
a lot of it is when the gun violence does happen, that you have to begin to, if you see something, say something. There's always a negative connotation associated with telling what you see, particularly in our community. And I think that, one of the biggest things, if you could, for those in our community that can help, is if they see something, say something. They need not fear of what may happen to them, although although it's out there, but they need not fear because, that's what law enforcement is there for, to help those that if they do say something, that there's no backlash to them.
For years, this was something that people could watch and say, this is something that happens somewhere else. And then it came to Buffalo. What do you hear now from constituents in the wake of the shooting at Tops?
You know what? They are scared. They are, and the biggest thing, they are scared. That's the biggest thing that I got out of this and talking to them. They're scared. A lot of them don't know, what's going to happen next. Will the community be targeted again? Will another gunman come in again? They don't feel safe.
If you could say today, let's take this as a first step, what's that first step?
Can you say that one more time?
If you could take a first step today, what would be that first step? Do you think the most important thing to do right now?
I think the most important thing to do, I think we need a friendlier police presence, in East Buffalo. police that, you know, are engaged into the community. I think that would eliminate a lot of the angst or the fear of gun violence happening and our community being safe. I think we have to have, you know, more community engaged police officers.
Certainly a lot of work to do and a conversation that's going to continue, but we have to leave it there for now. We've been talking with Howard Johnson, the legislature majority for the Erie County, sitting on the county's gun violence prevention task force. Howard, thank you again for being here.
Thank you, Katie. And if I could just add, I am not the majority leader of Erie County Legislature. It's Legislator Tim Myers. I'm just a member of the Erie County Legislature.
All right, thank you for that clarification. We appreciate it, and thank you again for joining us.
Thank you.